this meeting is taking place via a hybrid platform. Whilst there are some members present in the chamber, there are also members, council officers and members of the public who have registered for public question time, who have joined the meeting on Zoom, and I'm being assisted by a meeting facilitator to help manage the Zoom function. Those members attending the meeting via Zoom, whilst will be permitted to debate on any item before the council this evening, they will not be permitted to vote on any item. To ensure that all members can be heard and their contribution clearly captured for the webcast of this meeting, we have governance officers who will hand a microphone to members when I invite them to speak. If members wish to speak, please can you indicate by clearly raising your hand, and a governance officer will bring you the microphone. For your safety and those around you, please remain seated when speaking. For those members in the room, for this meeting we will be voting by way of a show of hands. Therefore, members should clearly raise their hands when indicating their vote when called to do so. The meeting is scheduled to last for 3 hours, and I would be grateful if everyone would ensure that they keep their speeches concise and to the issue being considered. Members will recall how difficult it is to look at the screen for an extended period of time, and therefore we should be mindful of those who are joining the meetings remotely this evening. We are not expecting a fire alarm. However, in the event of an alarm, please leave via the fire exits and assemble in the car park. Right, thank you very much. Can I also remind everyone to ensure they have their mobile phones switched to silent? And now I'd like to proceed to the first item of the business, agenda item number 1, apologies for absence. We've received apologies for absence from Councillor Courtauld, Councillor Swear and Councillor Santamura. I don't know if there's anybody else. No? No, I think that's it. Now we have a very urgent item to discuss, and members, before we proceed with the main business on the agenda, I'm using my discretion as Chairman of the Council to reorder to the agenda slightly and bring forward an urgent item for your consideration this evening. Members were provided with an urgent report prior to this meeting relating to the approval of reason for non-attendance at this meeting. Please can I invite Councillor Graham Butland, Leader of the Council, to introduce the report and move the recommendations. And please can I remind you that before you make your speech, your recommendations must be seconded.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I move the recommendations that are set out on page 1 of the report, paras 2.1 to 2.1.2.
Councillor Butland has moved the recommendation as set out in the urgent report. Please can I have a seconder?
Seconded, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Tom Cunningham. Do you wish to reserve your right to speak? Thank you. I would now like to invite Councillor Butland to speak on this matter.
Very briefly, Madam Chairman, as you said, somewhat unusual circumstances for our meeting this evening, but we've been able to do it as a result of all the group leaders on the Council agreeing to be pragmatic about this. We have reduced the number of members actually present so that we can maintain social distancing on the public health advice. Volunteers were sought of members who would be willing to join us online. I'm pleased to say that a number of members have done that. We all felt it would be unfair for them to be marked as absent when in fact they are joining us, and therefore for the purposes of members' attendance records, etc., with this motion means that if members are present on Zoom, not just watching on YouTube, Madam Chairman, but actually present on Zoom, then it will count as attendance. They will, of course, Madam Chairman, not be able to vote on anything tonight. So I therefore move the recommendations in the paper.
Thank you. If right, okay. Do any members wish to speak on this item? Please, if so, please indicate by raising your hand or via the chat function. I will be making a list of those who have indicated with the assistance of the monitoring officer. I will use my discretion as to which order I will call the members in, and please keep your hand raised until you have been acknowledged. Councillor Unsworth.
Just a very quick one, Madam Chairman. Thank you. Just a very quick one. We've highlighted one platform, Zoom. Would it be advisable to highlight other remote access platforms in case we need them in future? Thank you.
Councillor Unsworth, we're dealing with the motion that's for the urgent item under consideration. We referred to Zoom because that's the platform that we currently use for this particular meeting.
Anyone else? Nobody on.
Madam Chairman, I can't see anyone indicating, and no one is on the chat function.
Right. Councillor Cunningham.
Nothing else to add, thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you.
Madam
Would you
Chair.
like to reply, Councillor Butland, as the proposer of the recommendation? No. No. Thank you, members. The recommendations set out in the urgent report have been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please indicate. That is unanimous. The recommendations have been approved. Now we're going to deal with the declarations of interest. Do any members have any disclosable pecuniary interest, other pecuniary interest, or non-pecuniary interest that they wish to declare this evening? If so, can you please state the item and the nature of your interest? Councillor Beavis. Yeah. Councillor Beavis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It's in relation to item 7C, the health motion, and just to declare I'm a member of the Mid-Essex Patients and Community Forum. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, Councillor Abbott's indicating.
Councillor Abbott. Sorry, could you use your other arm, because that arm was right behind Councillor Bill. I couldn't see it.
Happy to, Madam Chairman. Just in respect to public question time, item 4, I don't know if it's applicable to be able to do this on behalf of the G&I group. I'll try that one, but certainly in respect to myself and the G&I group, if permissible. 3 of the speakers are known to us, Mr Staines, Mrs Pearson and Mr Rich's non-pecuniary interest.
Councillor Abbott, can I just confirm that that's all G&I members that applies to?
Yes.
Most grateful.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, there's no one indicating on the chat function. Oh, sorry, Councillor Hicks, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd just like to declare a non-pecuniary interest on item 7C, as I'm currently a contractor working for this organisation in the care industry as a driver. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, I now proceed to item number 3, minutes of the previous meeting. Can I please have a proposer to approve the minutes as an accurate record of the extraordinary meeting of full council held on the 11th of October? Councillor Butland. And I now seek a seconder. Councillor Cunning. The minutes have been approved, moved and seconded as an accurate record. All those in favour, please indicate. Right, that's unanimous, I think. Oh, right. One abstention.
Noted, Madam Chairman.
Right.
So the vote was in favour, so the minutes have been approved. So
Yeah.
for the abstention, which has been marked.
Public question time. Before we begin, can I check that the meeting facilitator has admitted the speakers for this evening to the meeting from the waiting room?
Chairman, I can confirm that all members of the public who are registered speakers have been admitted. Mr Staines, we could not check his connectivity, so with your permission, Chairman, could we just test Mr Staines' connectivity to the meeting before you take the item?
Yeah.
Mr Staines, if you can hear me, please, can we just test your connectivity to the meeting, please?
Hello, does that sound better?
It does. Thank you very much, Mr Staines. And Chairman, also Councillor White has joined the meeting since the meeting commenced. Please may I test his connection to the meeting also. Councillor White, if you can hear me, please, it's Emma Wisby speaking. Can we test your connection to the meeting, please?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can. Thank you very much, Councillor White. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you. I would like to start by welcoming all the public speakers to the meeting and ask that you keep your microphones switched to silence until I invite you to speak. We have 11 registered speakers for this evening's meeting. All registered speakers have 3 minutes each to make their statements. Members, please note that a number of the speakers present this evening will be making reference to the proposed prisons at Weathersfield Airfield. As such, we will invite those speakers to come forward first, and then once we have heard from all the speakers on this topic, either a verbal or written response will be provided by the appropriate Cabinet member. Once each speaker has finished making their statement, please can I remind them to mute their microphones. Rosie Pearson.
Good evening. I assume you can hear me?
Yes, loud and
Yes.
clear.
Thank you. So yes, thank you. I'm talking about the prisons at Weathersfield Airfield. And as others are this evening, I'd like to tell you that there are alternatives that are far better for the district. They'll bring jobs, tourism, protect wildlife and be popular with residents. I've had conversations with 2 potential buyers of the entire airfield in this last couple of weeks. They would buy with the environment and with local communities in mind. At the moment, they can't proceed with discussions, and nor is the Ministry of Defence able to enter into discussions with them because the prisons are on the table. Therefore, I'd like to propose that a win-win scenario would be for the Council to write to the Ministry of Justice on behalf of local communities. This was actually something that the leader of Buckinghamshire Council, Councillor Tett, did at a very similar stage of a prison proposal. I'd like the Council to point out that the Ministry of Justice is in breach of its own policies to locate prisons near jobs, homes, families and where crime takes place. And I'd also like the Council to consider to point out that having reviewed its own local evidence, the site is no longer considered suitable for the prisons. In addition, I'd like to ask which breaches the Council's guidelines and national guidelines. The consultation did not, as required by the Council's own statement of community involvement, allow as many people as possible to engage with the process, nor, as the Council requires, was engagement proportionate to the nature and scale of the proposed development. Parish councils and even others for the District Council were not notified about the consultation. Residents in Great Bardfield, Toppersfield and the Salings were not aware. This consultation also breached Principle 2 of the Gunnings Principles, which are recognised in case law. This principle requires sufficient information for consultees to give an intelligent consideration and to provide an informed response. In fact, there was so little information available, it was impossible to submit a considered response. Much relevant data, such as traffic modelling, is available for other prisons that should have been made available in the consultation. And the Ministry of Justice has stated in its own scoping request to the Council that it has compiled numerous reports already. They should have been made available to the public. So my question is, will the Council write to the Ministry of Justice saying in the first instance that it's reviewed its own evidence base and considers the site is no longer suitable for 2 prisons? And in the second instance, will the Council tell the Ministry of Justice that if a planning application submitted, consultation held was inadequate and will not be accepted as evidence of community involvement? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Rosalind Gorget.
Mrs. Gorget.
Can you hear me now?
There we go. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Good evening. I'm speaking as a resident and council taxpayer of Great Bardfield for more than 30 years. We seek to understand whether Braintree District Council considered the incredibly destructive consequences to the beautiful Essex countryside, once painted and loved by the Great Bardfield artists, before volunteering the Weathersfield airfield site to the Ministry of Justice. At the early stages of the local plan, the council sought to protect the rural north of the district by allocating all the housing to the south. What has changed? In particular, why did the council not take account of its own landscape character assessment? The relevant paragraphs are as follows: potential harms. The skyline of the valley slopes are visually sensitive to potential new development, with open views possible along and across the river corridor, and key planning and land management issues, potential for pollution of the River Pant from fertiliser and pesticide runoff from the agricultural slopes. The runoff from 2 mega prisons may create the very same problem. Potential for erection of new farm buildings on valley slopes, which would be conspicuous on the skyline. The prison site is at the very top of the ridge on the skyline. Increasing traffic on minor roads, especially during busy tourist periods and rush hour. It goes without saying that the light pollution arising from this enormous development, many times bigger than Stansted's terminal, in its hilltop setting will be seen from miles around and will be far more intrusive than current light levels. The applicant notes in the scoping letter that this site has previously developed land. In fact, this award-winning site is a haven for wildlife. There are grasslands, scrublands, Her Majesty's Diamond Jubilee woodland, the only one in Essex, planted with 75,000 native trees and shrubs. There is meadowland, local wildlife site Park Wood, which used to cover a far greater area and was cut down to the distress of villagers when the runway was built. Pond, badger sets, protected species of birds and numerous bat habitats. These habitats and species should be protected, not destroyed. Can the Council confirm that it has consulted the ecological reports lodged with it? The site is used by 74 species of birds, both nesting and visiting migrants, 400 plus species of invertebrates and 200 plus plant species. Many of those are rare or protected. Was the Essex Fields Club consulted, who hold the county's wildlife records? Why were these not taken into account when the site was offered to the MOJ? The Council will be aware that the first principle of mitigation is avoid. If there are protected species, a site should not be developed. Instead, the site should be considered for rewilding and a country park virtually absent for the people of North Essex. Will the Council now write to the Ministry of Justice and say that, having had time to consider its own evidence base, the site is no longer considered appropriate? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mark Alt.
Good evening, Chairman. Sorry, good evening. Can you hear me?
We can do, yes.
Thank you. I'm a local resident of Finchingfield and also recently a member of SWAP.
Mr. Alt, sorry to interrupt you. I understand your wife may be sat alongside you. If you could just ask Miss Beverley if you would mind just muting your microphone for us so we don't have the feedback. And then Mr. Alt, if you could continue, I'd be grateful.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Chairman. Is the Council aware that Weathersfield Airfield is one of the highest scoring of 400 airfields studied by Historic England for their heritage significance? Weathersfield is one of the only 25 sites that score in the highest 2 categories in the study. Is the Council aware that the 8 Victor alert hangars on the airfield are the last remaining Cold War examples in Europe? And is the council aware that there are a number of original World War II buildings on the airbase? Is the council aware that the airfield chapel was the first US Air Force chapel built in the UK? And is the council aware that there is the possibility of Roman road that crosses the airfield? Is the council aware that Site Hawks Hall, a Norman building from 1066, with links to the Knights Hospitaliers and is recorded by the Essex Archaeology? Can the council ask the MOD, the DIO, for copies of any heritage reports carried out in relation to the disposal of the airbase and take these into consideration before making any decision regarding any planning applications at the Weathersfield airfield? If not, and now that I have made you aware, can the leader confirm that the council will write to the MOJ and state that with the new evidence that has come to light this evening, and that you are unable... Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Beverly Alt.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
I'm a resident of Finchingfield and also a member of SWAP. I'd like to make a statement and ask a question about the Weathersfield prison. Did BDC consider the inadequate road infrastructure around the two proposed mega prisons site in Finchingfield, by the way, one of the most beautiful villages in Essex, before offering the Weathersfield airfield site to the MOJ? Have all councillors acted responsibly and taken the time to drive over Finchingfield's 200-year-old narrow bridge, then past the overhanging Grade 1 listed Guildhall, a building noted for its exceptional importance, which is regularly hit by existing traffic? Have you all driven into Weathersfield and noted the narrowness of the roads, in particular turning into Silver Street and passing the primary school? Has the council looked at the inappropriateness of all the routes to Weathersfield airfield for a project as massive as this, and just how far it is from an A road, when other prisons have quick access to an A road? We are aware that the Ministry of Justice is in talks with Highways, but will the council write to the Ministry of Justice and to Essex Highways, noting that the rural road system in the area around the airfield is not suitable for the construction and operational traffic associated with such an enormous proposal? Will the council also make the applicant aware that there is no public transport to serve the site? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Tricia Roberts. Can you hear us?
Yes, Hello, good evening.
Good evening, we can hear you.
Good. Good evening, everyone. I'm a resident of Gainsford End and I've lived here just over 18 years. And my question is also with regard to the proposed mega prison development at Weathersfield Air Base. I would like to know if the council considered and or consulted residents regarding alternative, more environmentally friendly proposals which could benefit the Essex community as a whole. We know that the leader believes that the prisons will bring jobs, but the Ministry of Justice's own consultation document pointed out that a similar prison created 160 jobs and that 30% of those were for prisoners. To sacrifice wildlife, landscape and the heritage of this beautiful area for so few jobs seems to be an utter travesty. We asked residents what types of job developed on the airbase, and we were inundated with ideas. Residents have suggested numerous alternative proposals, such as on the site, and all the ideas would bring jobs to the area and would build on the exceptional heritage, biodiversity and habitat of the airfield. So instead of two mega prisons, options preferred by residents include the rewilding of large parts of the land to further enhance the Diamond Jubilee wood which was planted, the replanting of the once much larger parkwood and perhaps the establishment of a nature and heritage discovery centre with cycle trails, guided hacks for horse riders, of which we have many, a rural crafts teaching centre and other tourist attracting activities. The part of the site known as the technical area has assets of community value such as a gymnasium, cinema, chapel, museum and community centre. These could be better used. Alternatives involving rewilding would bring carbon credits to benefit the MOD or to a new owner. And as I'm sure you may know, the Grays farm next to the airbase was bought especially for that purpose. So my question is, did the council consider alternative, more environmentally friendly proposals? And what will the council now do to support residents' alternative proposals for the Weathersfield airfield? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Jeremy Maddox.
Good evening, Council, ladies and gentlemen. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, fine, thank you.
Good. So I'm a resident of Finchingfield and a member of SWAP. My question relates to the mental health impacts of the proposed prisons at Weathersfield. The Council will no doubt be aware that the site for the proposed Weathersfield mega prisons was once a Cold War airbase armed with megaton nuclear weapons. I make no apology, therefore, for using the analogy of a mental health nuclear bomb being dropped on the village of Weathersfield by the Ministry of Defence and the Ministry of Justice at the invitation of the Braintree District Council Planning Office, affecting the well-being and mental health of many residents of the surrounding villages and rural communities. Some are elderly or vulnerable, and many residents are frightened by the prospect of this vast prison complex and the undesirable consequences of its construction and presence. The fallout from this proposal, if it goes ahead, will continue to have negative effects on the North Essex communities for generations to come. Recent dialogue with local communities has revealed the following. There is dismay at the impact of the proposal on the fragile local road network, anxiety of the environmental impact on the landscape, heritage and wildlife, anger at the inadequacy of the Ministry of Justice to consult properly with the local communities and the stealth tactics used so far, disappointment at the missed opportunity by the Braintree District Council to engage with the local communities and discuss alternative uses for the airfield site. This prime rural site could be used to benefit the mental health of children, young people and adults from across North Essex, with forest and nature schools, rewilding projects and opportunities for local careers in conservation and sustainability. At a time when the mental health of the nation is firmly in the spotlight, and I note that the first motion being debated in this evening's meeting is in fact related to the importance of mental health in the district, I have two questions for the Council. One, if the Council genuinely believes it has a crucial role to play in improving the mental health of everyone in our community, did it fully consider and investigate the impact of this proposal on the mental health of the local communities? And if so, could those results be made available? Secondly, will the Council now write to and inform the Ministry of Defence and Ministry of Justice that you will not be pressing the red button on the proposal and you will withdraw your invitation before this devastating mental health bomb is detonated? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Leslie Groves.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can, thank you.
Okay. I'm speaking as a resident living on the MOD due to my husband's current posting. As a member of this community, I've been focused on making things better for the Army families. I've secured funding and fought for our community centre on here, not only for the Army families, but for other local communities to access. One thing for certain is that the MOD families intend to keep the Army families on the base, living just 450 metres by this. It'll be families living here, but not only us, those living in Scorpions Lane and the local villages. These people will have to withstand a huge increase in traffic, destruction to local wildlife, increased noise and light pollution, and building plans that are completely out of keeping with the local area. My question: over the last few months, we have been told and received in writing additional proposals intended to take place on the site once it is disposed of. Is the council aware of any other development plans other than the 2 prisons intended to be built on the airfield, or will there be more on the site? If so, will they say what else is planned? And if they are not aware, can they find out the full plans for the site? Then consider the full airfield and site planning, not just the prison in isolation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to invite Councillor Butland to either respond to the speakers who have made reference to the proposed prisons at Weathersfield Airfield, or provide a written reply. Can I also remind the speakers that they have no right of reply?
Can I just interrupt? Have you gone through all the speakers yet, please?
I understand there's some other members of the public who want to speak on this subject. I think Mr. Staines said he wished to.
Understanding Mr. Staines was here to speak on the air quality. Councillor Butland, sorry.
Yeah, but my name's Nick Chapman and I'm here to speak as well.
Mr. Chapman, you're here. Are you here to speak on the prison item?
Well, it's related. Yeah, I think it would be worth me speaking before Councillor Butland replies.
Sorry, Mr. Chapman, can I just confirm, are you speaking on the prison issue?
Yeah, it's related to that, yeah.
Okay, happy to bring you forward, Madam Chairman, if
Thank
you
you.
wish to. Yeah, Mr. Chapman, if you'd like to start.
Okay. So, well, thank you for putting this together in a hybrid environment. I know it's difficult, but I think you're doing a great job. So here's my statement to my question. I mean, organisations are changing priorities rapidly to meet the goals set out in COP26. The need to protect our rural environments and reduce carbon emissions is now even more of a priority. And I'm encouraged to see some of the items on the agenda today. However, the mega prison development proposed by the Ministry of Justice in 3 fields does no longer fit with national policy to move to carbon net zero. Despite some of the claims made by the Ministry of Justice and the radio broadcast this morning, it doesn't work. It also doesn't align to the Weathersfield Conservation Area Plan, the Braintree Development Plan, or the emerging local plans. Within our Three Fields district, there is close to full employment, a high demographic of pensioners, over 500 listed buildings, of which sit some adjacent to the proposed site, and an insufficient road network. So I think this is what's important. What seemed the right approach a few years ago will not necessarily be the case today. And for this reason, I urge everybody to now pull together to pursue an alternative proposal for this site. I'm being told even though, as people have said today, this site was previously put forward as a recommendation. So, not in writing, I think we need this verbally. Tonight, I would ask that the councillors show their commitment in agreeing 2 specific actions. Firstly, advise the Ministry of Defence and the Ministry of Justice that this site may no longer be fit for purpose under new policies and new priorities. And this is now clear that we should not recommend this site for 2 new build mega prisons. So I hope that's really clear, the first commitment. Secondly, councillors representing Three Fields and the leader of the council committee, Councillor Butland, agreed to meet and discuss alternative and suitable uses with our newly formed Residents Association, which I've also joined, called SWAP. These two commitments will help us send out a positive message to residents before the Christmas holidays. I can't impose enough how stressed you've made the residents of these villages and surrounding villages, having visited them and knocked on their doors, which many people haven't. So I hope, hopefully, tonight you'll be able to answer those two questions so we can go some way to relieve the stress that has already been caused. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Butland.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you to all of the speakers this evening. A couple of things I need to, I think, clarify first. Clearly, this council has to operate within the planning processes. The danger, if we don't, is that a Secretary of State could take action to call anything in which would take the decision-making away from us locally. Secondly, I need to point out that at this present time, there is no planning application for anything on the Weathersfield prison site. What we have is what is known as a request for an opinion, and that is an opinion which any developer, and in this case the Ministry of Justice is the same as any other developer, asking for an opinion on what the council feels should be included within an environmental statement. And this is known as a scoping process. We are currently dealing with that application and involving consultants to work with us on the environmental issues, many of which have been raised by the speakers tonight. The second item I'd like to raise is the issue of whether this council offered the site. And I want to state quite clearly, at no time did this council offer Weathersfield as a site for a prison. But I will just put the record straight as to what exactly happened. In February 2016, I, as the leader of the council, received a letter from the Ministry of Justice in common with a number of other local authorities, asking if we had any sites suitable for a prison which would meet the criteria set out in their letter. And in their letter they said, we believe your area could have a viable option. They also said that they were writing to a number of other local authorities across the country to examine, in their opinion, similar options that might work for them. They set down in their letter site criteria. There were 11 questions that they put. I won't go through all of them, but many of them relate to issues which tonight's speakers have raised. I suppose the most important ones, which have been raised a number of times by representatives of SWAP, is the issue of the highway situation, roads, and of course the environmental and ecological situation. The letter was responded to on the 18th of February by an officer, not by me, but by an officer, about this site. We related to the size. They were looking for a size with a minimum of around 25 acres. We have to be honest, we have to say that the site was significantly in excess of that. We were asked whether there were clear impediments to achieving planning permission for a prison. Our response said, sustainable transport to the site for staff and visitors will be an issue. Appropriate travel planning and bus services would need to be put in place. There were issues around the flood zone, to which we said the site is not located within flood zone 2 or 3. We were asked about how possible it would be to connect the site to water, sewerage, gas, electricity, in the MOJ's words, without unreasonable cost. We said, because we are not the owners of the site, that we expected that the site is already connected to those services, but they should check directly with the owners, namely the Ministry of Defence. The next question is probably one of the key ones which was raised tonight, and I personally have significant concerns about, whether there was good access to public transport and motorways and trunk roads. Our response was, at present the site is poorly connected to public transport routes, being located in a rural location at a distance from the local village. The site is accessed by B roads for approximately 7 miles before it links to the A120 at Braintree. We were asked about contamination and whether that would be manageable, and we answered that we were not personally aware of any contamination, although as a council we would not know exactly what the Ministry of Defence have been doing on that site over the many years that they have been operating. We were asked whether it was developed or a brownfield site. We responded that the site is currently in the ownership of the MOD, but we understand that a significant proportion of the site is developed. And of course, if you take a Google Earth view, you can see that that is the case. And finally, whether there were any significant public rights of way or third-party rights of access or covenants. Again, we said, to the best of our knowledge, although we're not the owners, there were no significant public rights of way, as the land is currently in the ownership of the MOD. So therefore, public access was significantly curtailed. That is the only correspondence that took place between the Ministry of Justice and this council back in 2016. That was not, in my view, in any way could be construed as us offering the site. It was this council responding to a request from a government department, which we would do irrespective of what the issue was about. I am aware that we didn't have any further correspondence from the MOJ on the prison suggestion. And at the end of March 2016, it was announced in a list of publicly owned brownfield sites which had been given over to the what is now Homes England for development as a housing site. I can tell people that we had a meeting in this building with Homes England at which we expressed our severe, total reservations about the inappropriateness of the site to have, I think I'm right in saying, but I stand to be corrected, some 5,000 houses put there. Our view was that it would be plonking houses in the middle of nowhere, and therefore we would be unlikely to support that if that was the case, but they would be, of course, eligible to go through the planning procedures. So that was in March 2016, and in the intervening period of time, we had no further approaches from any government department. Now, as I say, many of the issues which members of the public have made tonight would be extremely appropriate if we were dealing with a planning application. And I hope that if we get a planning application, then clearly that will be publicised on our planning portal, and it will be open to any member of the public, for or against whatever propositions might be coming, to put their views. And I would anticipate, expect, and be very surprised if those who have spoken tonight were not to make those comments on that. It will then go, if a planning application is received, it will then go through the normal planning process and will go to our planning committee to determine whether the application should be approved or not. In the event of a planning application, this one or any other one, being refused by the Planning Committee, of course, any developer, whether they are a housing developer or the Ministry of Justice, will have the right to go to appeal and eventually could go to the Secretary of State. Now, there have been some suggestions tonight about suggestion of alternative uses. And can I say, I recently went to Weathersfield myself at the invitation of the new owners of the neighbouring farm, which one of our speakers spoke about, who have purchased 135 acres with the express provision of, condition that they wish to rewild it and do it. And I think that is something which is tremendous and certainly something that, as a council, we would very much wish to support. The difference there is that the people who want to do that are now the owners of the land. The owners of the land at the moment are the Ministry of Defence. Now, one of the speakers said that she had spoken to 2 potential buyers. Clearly, if anyone makes an offer to the Ministry of Defence, which the Ministry of Defence accepts and wishes then to pursue a policy for rewilding, we will work with them, should they need a planning application, to carry forward their things in the same way as we will need to work with any other planning applicant. But I would suggest to members of the public who have spoken tonight that it is no good trying to say to BDC, Braintree District Council, that this site should be used for X, Y or Z. We are not the owners. That conversation is something that SWAP will need to have with the Ministry of Defence. And if SWAP want to liaise with these 2 potential purchasers to make what would presumably need to be a fairly attractive offer to the Ministry of Defence, that would be the way to take that forward. So, Madam Chairman, I hope I've clarified some areas which have been doing the rounds on social media. We have not offered the site. We have outlined, way back in 2016, some of the significant constraints to this site, and those constraints have also been mentioned tonight by members of the public. But also, there has to be a recognition that this is no different from any other planning application. There is a developer, in this case the Ministry of Justice. There is a landowner, not a farmer in this case, but the Ministry of Defence. And the same discussions will take place between those 2 government departments as take place between housing developers and landowners elsewhere in the district. I think, Madam Chairman, at that stage, I've probably hopefully covered all aspects. We, like everyone else, await to see whether the Ministry of Justice will come forward. There has been no public consultation on any planning application because there has been no planning application. All I would say is that together with my district council colleagues, Councillor Tattersley and Councillor Santamuro, we have regularly attended parish councils, all the parish councils that are in the area, and we know very well the strength of feeling of those parish councils. We have also advised that should a planning application be put forward and wish to be opposed, it will need to be on planning grounds. That is the only successful way in which a planning application can be defeated. It has to be from the head and not the heart. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Right, can I ask Mr. Michael Staines if he's available to speak now, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, fine.
Excellent, excellent. Just to swap the topic, I'm Michael Staines, a resident living on the A120 near Coggeshall, and I'll be talking about air quality monitoring. 64,000 deaths a year, or 98 in every 100,000 deaths in the UK, are attributed to air pollution causing heart disease, stroke, lung cancer and pneumonia. COVID deaths are under 150,000, so air pollution is a consistent, potent and invisible killer. Braintree District Council currently monitors about 20 locations. It uses old technology that is expensive to process, slow to analyse and publish, and excludes particulate matter data. Monitoring microscopic pollutants, or PM2.5s, is vital if we are to avoid the toxins they carry getting into the lungs and bloodstream of district residents. PM2.5 includes dust from tyres and brakes, so electric vehicles will continue to emit them even as pollutants from fossil fuels may reduce. Adopting new web-enabled technology to monitor and publish in real time a wider range of pollutants will help those at risk to take personal protective steps, like a pollen count. Air quality data will better inform planning decisions, especially road-dependent housing, road improvement schemes, or approving housing developments close to industrial activity, like the UK's third largest incinerator at Rivenhall. What to do? Monitor all pollutants, including PM2.5s, now, because the gear is already on the shelf, and the new Homes Bonus Money pot just keeps growing. Through planning, we can protect residents from long-term exposure to air pollutants, especially those near roads or on roads with forecast growth from unplanned or unsustainable development. Some of the new monitoring equipment should be movable or even rentable to developers, enabling BDC planning to require a minimum period of high-quality air monitoring data as part of any planning submission for large developments, ensuring that the forecast pollution impact is acceptable. And then we can even monitor post-development what pollution actually takes place. Why not invite parish councils to nominate their key areas of concern as part of the district's air quality strategy development? Rather than wait, the BDC could pride itself on monitoring pollution with a wide scope, high quality, high frequency and total transparency. It could resolve trends and issues quickly, recording the mitigation results in real time to residents. BDC could be the poster child of the government's goal of treating the cause and not the symptoms of air pollution. The government report on the progress towards the WHO PM2.5 targets in July 19 suggested that the NHS could actually save nearly £7 billion a year. I urge councillors to vote with their heart and lungs to reject the amendment proposed by the majority tonight, as this will serve only to delay effective pollution measurement and subject our residents to more harm for longer. A delay in adopting best practice technology or developing a cohesive air quality strategy will cost the NHS in this region much more money and enable poor planning decisions about roads, unsustainable economic activity and housing to carry on. All the while, the residents most vulnerable to air pollution suffer reduced life quality or even life expectancy and have an increased likelihood of hospital admission to our already overstretched local NHS. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to invite Councillor Smith to either report now or to provide a written reply to Mr Staines. And can I remind you, Mr Staines, that you have no right of reply. Thank you, Councillor Smith. Do you want to come to the table?
I don't propose to respond to this comment at present, Madam Chairman, as it will be discussed in item 7B. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Schmidt. Mr Bruce Atkinson, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I'd like to speak to the council just regarding their taxation policy on empty rental property. Braintree Council charges property tax on empty properties to the landlord from day one of a tenancy void period. Having spoken to many councillors, they appear to be unaware of this policy of billing landlords on empty properties. In my view, the policy is immoral as it's effectively we're being taxed by the council, but unrepresented by the councillors who cover the areas where we have houses. Braintree's policy is also inconsistent with the rules of other councils in the surrounding area. For example, Chelmsford and Brentwood councils do not bill landlords on empty properties for the first 3 months of any void period. Other councils basically allow what I see as a sensible tax-free period on empty properties to allow reasonable renovations and improvements to tenanted properties. I think also we need to bear in mind the taxation burden that's being put on landlords is becoming punitive. Landlords are leaving the market and consequently the number of rental properties available are reducing and rents are rising as a result. If you consider that landlords pay tax on rental income, we pay tax on in the form of additional stamp duty should we buy a property. We're taxed on the profits that we make on the property, and we're also taxed on any capital gains that we make on any property investment. I recently purchased a probate property in Witham. The owner had died and the property had been empty for on the property. I received a tax bill from the council demanding 1 year's tax on the property, in spite of the fact I was making renovations to allow me to rent the house out as affordable housing. I had no choice but to increase the rent to cover the council's tax bill. Is it any wonder that many tenanted properties in the area are in a poor state of repair, given that the tax policy forces landlords to avoid void periods so they don't make repairs to avoid being penalised by this taxation? Landlords in Braintree are effectively subject to a double burden of taxation by the council, paying taxes on the house, on the empty rental property, as well as the property in which they live themselves. I, for example, pay property taxes on my house in Chelmsford, but every time I have a void period on property in Braintree, I'm taxed on that. In billing the property, when the property is empty, you're effectively charging for services that are not being consumed, as there's nobody in the property to use the services. You're also billing the landlord at the worst possible time, when he is burdened with the costs of renovations, energy bills, water bills, etc., at a time when the property is receiving no income. Something tells me that this policy has not been well thought out because it's basically counterproductive. Speaking to nearly every councillor in the Braintree area where I own property, whilst they're polite and listen to my points, none of these councillors are able to help me.
Mr. Atkinson, can you hear me?
Yes.
You've actually gone quite a bit over your time. Have you nearly finished?
Okay. Well, just to say, I think that Braintree Council needs to bring its policy in line with other councils in the area and allow a tax-free period of 3 months to allow renovations.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask Councillor McGee to either respond now or to provide a written reply. Mr. Atkinson, please may I remind you that you have no right of reply.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll provide a written reply to the question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, the final speaker tonight, Mr. Colin Ritchie.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Having lived in Braintree for 7 years now, I would say that anecdotally, our healthcare provision may not be as good as our West. I've yet to see regularly the same GP at my local surgery and know from political campaigning that people are concerned about the state of social care as well as National Health Service care, even before reading the comments that you would see on social media which should always be taken with a pinch of salt. That's not to say that the individuals who have cared for me are any less competent than others I've encountered in other parts of the UK, rather that they are stretched and maybe are doing less well than they could be if they were better supported locally and nationally. Certainly, it seems evident to me that seeing people promptly before issues get worse is going to be more efficient. I'm glad I don't have to field the calls at 8 a.m. from people wanting to see their GP on that day with a system that appears to have less capacity than the demand placed on it. Perhaps a better network of local provision is needed. Braintree sits outside the fringe of London and regrettably does not have the rail connections of Bishop Stortford, Harlow or Chelmsford. I came to live and work in this town by circumstance. It has so much potential and so many lovely people living here, yet talking to one of the GPs I have seen, he said that they struggle to recruit. Do we have a local plan that will make Braintree an even better place to live, which would help to ease recruitment issues for healthcare providers? There is clearly going to be a blurring of roles when discussing healthcare and social care issues, but healthcare and social care matter. What is Braintree Council doing to ensure that we live well, that both our social care and our healthcare provision can improve? How do you as a council advocate for better local provision for healthcare? How do we compare to other places in the UK? I don't know whether my anecdotal experience is actually representative of the system as a whole. It's not scientifically done. I'd like to put on record my thanks to the individuals who work within our healthcare system, especially in a time of COVID. I clapped for them last April, and my questions today are aimed at better supporting them going forwards. It's easy to criticise, but hopefully we can work together to come up with some solutions and advocate together for local and national change as appropriate. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. We'd like to now invite Councillor Butland to respond or provide a written reply to Mr. Ritchie. And please can I remind you, Mr. Ritchie, you have no right of reply.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As Mr. Richards will know, we are debating this later this evening and delighted that we have a cross-party motion which will be debated and I hope accepted. I would just say one or two things. We talk about GPs. We do need to recognise that all GP practices are small businesses. And like all small businesses, some are run better than others. 20 odd years ago, maybe more than that now, I had responsibility for all of the GPs, 800 odd GPs across Essex. The thing I find most frustrating is that the practices that were good practices 30 years ago are still good practices, and the practices that I personally would never have gone to 30 years ago are still practices that I would not go to. And that is, as I say, that depends on the leadership. It depends on whether GP practices, as Mr. Ritchie said, are able to attract the right staff. Again, I keep referring to the practice that I attend, which started in Little Waltham and now also looks after Great Notley. It's a training practice. Most of the doctors there are members of the RCGP, which is recognised as being the sort of cream of general practice. And it's a practice which attracts good quality graduates who want to come and do general practice. I am aware in the town of Braintree, but this is across Essex generally and indeed across the country, that there are other practices which any self-respecting graduate doctor would steer clear of. There's also the fact that we don't make, and our motion later on this evening refers to it, use of the other skills in the primary care area, such as primary care nurses, sometimes derogatorily termed as practice nurses, primary care consultants, nurse consultants, and community pharmacists, whose training is exactly the same length of time as a doctor. Those, Mr. Richards, I think are issues which we are consistently raising through the forums of our Health and Wellbeing Board, They are ones, unfortunately, that cannot be solved locally, although I am delighted, and the motion tonight congratulates the government, on making more spaces available to attract new doctors and new primary care professionals into it. So I do understand and I do recognise what he says about the inconsistent approach. And so what you say it's anecdotal. I think it's more than anecdotal. I think it is actually the situation, and it's a situation that's existed since I had anything to do with the NHS. Not my fault, but since I first got connected with the NHS way back in the 1980s, and I think it happened before then as well. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Members, this statement concludes public question time, and can I thank all the speakers once again for their statements. You're all welcome to continue watching the remainder of the meeting on the Council's YouTube channel if you wish to do so. And I'm now going to ask the meeting facilitator to remove you from the meeting.
Madam Chairman, whilst the meeting facilitator deals with that, if you want to move on to your announcements.
Okay. Well, I've been quite busy this month. In fact, I've been very busy this month. But one of the highlights of my month was attending the funeral service for David Amos in Southend. It was an amazing service. The church was absolutely packed. And I think it was a wonderful memorial to a man who was clearly held in very, very high esteem by all his constituents and his colleagues, I might add. So that was a really good thing to go to. It's with great sadness that I advise members of the death of a former district councillor, who I personally didn't know, but you may, some of you may, Ian Poynton, represented Witham North Ward for the Labour Party, and he served on the council for a total of 16 years, spanning the periods from 1983 to 87 and 1991 to 2003. Mr. Poynton served as the leader of the council in 2001, 2 and 3, and during that time he was responsible for overseeing the implementation of the Local Government Act 2000, which introduced a new model of political management to local governments based on executive and scrutiny arrangements. And another very exciting thing to do was to switch on the Christmas tree lights in Braintree. The whole thing was lovely, the new pedestrianised high street and everything was absolutely brilliant, all the stalls, and I was delighted to welcome Beth Shriver, I can always find it difficult, that name, the Olympic BMX gold medalist, who actually turned up to help us switch on the lights. And I also have switched on many other lights, and it's been a real privilege to watch especially the children's faces when you switch on the lights. However, I can honestly tell you my feet are now beginning to protest of being permanently frozen. I also held my carol service last week, which was as full as the church could be. There were lots of sudden things with COVID about people coming in and everything else, but it actually went very, very well. And for those who attended, thank you very much indeed. I have done quite a lot of community visits, and I've been to Just Content Publishing Services, which are an amazing company, Bumble and Yarn, if you want to know how to crochet, Intel Limited in Fearing, the Rethink Art Group, which is another area which I was very impressed with people who maybe don't fit in very well to just a standard life, and so they go for painting and everything, and it's really lovely. And the Oak Room Spa, which was just up my street in Halstead. And I also attended the celebration for the Queen's Award for Global Resale, which is based in Braintree. And actually, even they didn't know, because they were on the Bradbury Park, and I was able to tell them that that's where Bradbury's was. And if you haven't heard of it, Bradbury's was a very big company in Braintree, making hoists for cars and car wrenches and things. They were like Courtaulds, they were a very big company. So I was able to fill them in on all that because they didn't know. And now I'd like to invite Councillor Butland to make any announcements.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As you know, I don't normally take up very much time on this, but there are a number of issues which I do need to draw to the attention of members. First, the situation regarding COVID. You will be aware, Madam Chairman, that last week England moved to Plan B in response to the risks of the Omicron variant. As a result of this, we are required to wear face coverings in most indoor public places and large venues. From today, everyone is encouraged to work from home if you can, and from the 15th of December, you will need to show your NHS COVID pass at nightclubs, some venues and large events to show that you are vaccinated and have had a negative test result in the last 48 hours, or you have a health exemption. This weekend, there was an announcement that the booster programme will be significantly accelerated to increase protection against the Omicron variant, and the target for the programme has been brought forward by a month, with everyone eligible over the age of 18 to be offered a vaccine before the new year. I attended a meeting this morning, Madam Chairman, of the COVID response group in Essex where this was discussed. This new target will require a significant increase in the capacity and rollout of the programme locally, and our health colleagues are working on plans to deliver against this target. As a council, our teams continue to support our health colleagues through the work of the Essex Resilience Forum, and we will be looking at support needed around capacity and resources, transport and communication. As members will appreciate, this announcement was only made yesterday, so I'm not in a position to give more detailed information at this stage, but I will ensure that members are updated as soon as possible. The key messages, which we all agreed needed to be out, is that in the Braintree district, at the moment, there are 610 cases of COVID-19 per 100,000, and this is an increase of 12.4% from the previous week. The key message from the Director of Public Health is that our best defence against Omicron is to get boosted. A booster, Madam Chairman, however, is not a top-up. It is a huge increase in our ability to fight the virus. The level of immunoglobulin, the substance that provides immunity by attacking the virus, increases up to 40-fold following a booster jab. Evidence, of course, shows that Omicron is growing much faster than the Delta variant in England and is projected to become the dominant variant within the next few days. Now, we are expanding capacity, when I say we, collectively, the health service and local government, to expand capacity to get as many people vaccinated as possible. The programme, the NHS vaccination programme, will offer every adult the chance to book a COVID-19 booster vaccine by the end of the year. And as part of the biggest and fastest vaccine programme in the health service history, online bookings are available for all of those in their 30s and above from today, and the national booking service will open to everyone aged 18 and over from Wednesday of this week. The NHS is prioritising bookings for boosters and is urging people to book a slot to guarantee their vital vaccination. Also, more pre-bookable and walk-in COVID vaccine appointment slots are being made available at Chelmsford City Racecourse this weekend, both Saturday and Sunday, from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. And slots can be booked because I have, not for myself, but I've booked one today for one of my constituents for Saturday afternoon, and I encourage as many people as possible to do that. As far as this organisation is concerned, Madam Chairman, we have done what we can to protect our frontline services, and as such, officers have been putting plans into place to ensure that we can continue to provide these. We will continue at this moment to keep Causeway House open. This will mean that there will be some staff who will need to come into the building to support this process. this is something we will keep under review as more information about the effect of the new virus becomes available. Officers have reinstated the response structure in order to ensure resources are prioritised and key issues responded to. And internal reporting has been increased to ensure speedy response to business continuity issues. Staff and managers have received updated guidance to minimise risk and protect frontline services. And we are working through national guidance to be clear about our role in terms of supporting our businesses and the public to comply with new arrangements. Second issue, Madam Chairman, I did say in my Cabinet report that I had hoped to have made a statement about the White Paper. Most people will know that the Levelling Up White Paper, which was due this month, has now been postponed until early January, and again I will let members know as soon as we have it. I want to draw attention to Transport East strategy. I was going to show a short video which Transport East has done, but given the time, Madam Chairman, I will skip that, but I will send it out individually, or ask officers to send it out individually to all members about the transport strategy. I think it's very important that as many people as possible respond to that consultation item, which needs to be done by, I think, the end of January. Fourth point is to announce change in Cabinet membership. With the appointment of a new Executive Director, Suzanne Bennett, the Chief Executive has been looking at how some of the tasks might be put between the new executive team when that comes into being, and I have also looked about how that could best be matched by the executive team. I was also keen that we should give greater emphasis to the implementation of our climate change strategy. So as a result, I have decided that we will no longer have the 3 Cabinet support members that we established earlier in the year, and will replace David, former Councillor Bebb's post, which was not replaced at the time that he left. And I've asked Councillor Van Dolken to join the Cabinet and work in the team which includes Councillor Mrs Schmidt and Councillor John McKee. And I will issue to all members the revised responsibilities of those Cabinet members very shortly. And the final point, Madam Chairman, is, I think, a nice one to end on just before Christmas, and that is our customer satisfaction survey, which we have recently conducted, and which I think the whole of the Council can be proud of the results that have come forward. We compare our results with the national result of local authorities carried out by the Local Government Association, and that was carried out in October 2021. In nearly all categories, Braintree District Council is not only ahead, but significantly ahead of the average of all local authorities. So, Madam Chairman, for example, on the district being a good place to live, 89% of the respondents in Braintree District Council agreed, compared to a national average of 78%. Being satisfied with the way Council runs things, Braintree District Council, 80% of the residents said they were satisfied, compared to 56% nationally. In terms of the Council offering value for money, Braintree District Council achieved 60% satisfaction, compared to a national figure of 43%. On how well the Council kept people informed of what was going on, Braintree District Council scored 76%, compared to a national average of 57%. In terms of our waste collection services, the satisfaction level was 90%, compared to 70% nationally. On street cleansing, again, 90% satisfaction, compared with 65% nationally. On our parks and open spaces, satisfaction with our parks and open spaces was 76%, compared with 75% nationally. And on our sports and leisure services, the satisfaction rate was 69%, compared with 58% nationally. By any measurement, Madam Chairman, These are hugely impressive results in what has been an extremely difficult year for all our staff to deliver on our services. And I would like to thank all our staff, I will thank all our staff for the tremendous effort that has been put in, from the leadership of Andy through all our staff and our managers and our front line. These are amazing results which we should be proud of as councillors, but more important, our staff should be proud of, because at the end of the day, they've actually delivered them. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Butland. And I'd like to reiterate, actually, if you haven't had your boosters, please go and get them. The next item on the agenda is item number 6, the Essex Playing Field Awards, which I did actually have the pleasure of attending, because I'm, believe it or not, because I'm very sort of geriatric, an Essex Playing Field Inspector. But can I invite Councillor Wendy Smith? Do you want the microphone? Cabinet Member for Environment, to introduce and present the award.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is always one of the highlights of the year for me, because it normally gives me the opportunity to bring in members of our team who work outside in all sorts of terrible weathers, to come in here and you to actually see them and be able to acknowledge them. But sadly, this is the second year, due to COVID, that we've been unable to do this. For those who can see, next to Madam Chairman are some of the amazing awards we've had. The Essex Playing Fields Award almost becomes an embarrassment. This year we won 42 awards, which was 6 more than last year, and 21 of these were gold. And so, as I said, it's so very sad that we haven't got members of the team here in person, but I have passed on my congratulations to them, and I'm sure I can take it from Council this evening that Rick, Rob, and too many of them for me to name, that we truly appreciate the extraordinary work that makes our open spaces so very, very good. As I said, they work in all kinds of weather, and as we know, we've had some pretty grim weather this year, but they still do it, they do it cheerfully, they do it excellently, and we should be exceedingly proud of them. And as I said, I'm sure you wish me to send your thanks as a council to the team. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. I have to say I was exhausted that night, because all I did was keep going backwards and forwards to get prizes. So, right, we'll now move on to agenda item 7A, a motion by Councillor Diana Garrett, championing mental health. Do you want the microphone, or you're coming? Good. Members, the motion is set out on pages 6 and 7 of the agenda, and I can confirm that the proposer and the seconder of the motion are present this evening, so this item can proceed. As there are no amendments submitted for this motion, Councillor Mrs Garrett, please can you formally move your motion, which is set out on pages 6 and 7 of the agenda.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good evening, members. I'm very pleased to recommend the championing mental health motion set out on pages 6 and 7 of your agenda, and I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs Garrett. Upon submission, this motion was seconded by Councillor Hensman. Councillor Hensman, do you second this motion?
Yes, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hensman. Do you wish to reserve your right to speak?
Yes, please, Madam Chairman. I'd like to speak after the motion has been introduced. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Garrett, please can I invite you to make your speech on your motion?
Thank you. Good mental health is essential for the overall well-being of our communities, and councils can have an enormous impact on the local area by promoting and supporting better mental health. Post-pandemic analysis has revealed that people's mental health has suffered at the hands of COVID-19, and that this is likely to continue for some time. We want to raise awareness and encourage people to look after their own mental health, address any potential issues, and reduce the apparent stigma and any impact on recovery. We recognise that there are inequalities and discrimination within the community, and we seek to address and reduce these, in part by proactively listening to people of all ages and backgrounds about their needs and considering these as plans are revealed to build back better and shape an environment which will help to improve people's general mental well-being. Of course, the Council has been working on this subject for some time and has already appointed and trained mental health first aiders. Mental health has been identified as a priority of the Braintree Health and Wellbeing Panel, and a district-wide mental health forum has been created to bring together a variety of partners working in this field from statutory and voluntary sector to join work on priorities. The Council has signed the Local Authorities Mental Health Challenge, which is run by the Centre for Mental Health, and has appointed myself and Councillor Hensman as mental health champions. We've also undertaken mental health first aid training, which will go some way to support us in this most important role. All councillors can play a positive role in championing mental health, and on an individual and strategic basis, and I sincerely hope that members will join me today by supporting this important motion. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Can I remind members that speeches should relate strictly to the motion under discussion and be necessary for the progression of the debate or to a point of order relating to procedure. Speeches should be no longer than 5 minutes, and I will curtail excessive speeches or where the speech no longer addresses the motion. Members may only speak once on this motion debate. Do any members wish to speak on the motion? If so, please indicate by raising your hand or indicate using the chat function.
Madam Chairman, I believe Councillor Hensman wished to speak immediately after Councillor Garrett.
Right. Councillor Hensman.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. Joining this challenge reinforces this Council's commitment to supporting all individuals who are involved in the organisation. Now, Braintree District Council often doesn't recognise just how good it is in providing assistance, whether that be officers, members, anyone connected to the organisation, and introducing changes to ensure officers and members have the best possible working environment. Just because Councillor Garrett and I are taking the lead, it doesn't stop there. All 49 of us can play our part in helping others who may have issues, whether that be a listening ear or signposting to an external agency. This includes assisting residents in our wards, identifying when help may be needed, and being confident enough to bring those issues to someone's attention. There's also the importance of recognising when we ourselves need some support. We shouldn't be afraid to ask for that help. Mental health doesn't discriminate. We hope that between us, our lead officer for the challenge, Sherry Root, and officers who have volunteered to take on these roles as mental health first aiders, there will always be someone we can talk to. Where all have undertaken formal mental health first aid training, showing how committed we are. We need to make mental health something that we discuss openly and honestly. With this in mind, it was pleasing to see members from all parties supporting this motion. The Local Authorities Mental Health Challenge is a specific national initiative. Even those with a physical or neurological condition can have mental health issues as comorbids where their primary conditions aren't properly supported. I would like to see additional measures put in place for these other disabilities through future motions brought to this Council, and hope to gain similar support from colleagues for these as well. In the meantime, I thank you for supporting this motion. I look forward to working with you all to promote well-being amongst colleagues and our residents. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hensman. Councillor Beavis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and I'd like to congratulate the Council under the banner of Live Well on its work on mental health so far. Issue 7 in 2019 referred to the work of mental health workshops and a series of actions. We've also had the mental health packs for staff and councillors, and I understand that this support has been taken up, which is really encouraging. Essex County Council has carried out in the past few years a task and finish group on mental health, looking at particular the Virgin contract and working with young people's mental health with Essex Health Watch and the year reports, which were absolutely brilliant and really worth the read by any councillors in the chamber. In fact, in Sybil Headingham today, a window was dressed for Christmas. But the lady that was doing the work on the window, having spoken to the gentleman that ran this particular barber shop in Sybil Headingham, said that she was really mindful that, you know, beauty services and other small businesses within our district, just by offering a cup of tea and a chat to their customers, have also got a vital part to play in supporting people's mental health. So I will be supporting this motion, Madam Chairman. I really look forward to how we can take this out of the council chamber and into our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tattersley.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm really pleased that this motion looks as though it's going to be supported across the council. Mental health issues have received a much higher profile during the current COVID epidemic than at any time that I can remember, and rightly so. The motion supports many initiatives that have already been introduced by the council, and a few, but by no means all of them, have been outlined in Councillor Ricky and my Cabinet Member report later in the agenda. Having two councillors, Councillor Diana Garrett and Councillor Andrew Hensman, both of whom have got extensive experience in understanding mental health issues, have been appointed as mental health champions, which will mean that the council has got a clear line and support to help ensure that the council continues to work with partners, reduce inequalities, and more importantly, maintain a dialogue to people of all ages and background about what they need for better mental health support. And I think this motion will give some real influence for mental health issues. Of course, any policy is only as good as the way that it's monitored and supervised, and any concerns that the mental health champions have can be discussed directly with me as the Cabinet Member for Health and Wellbeing, Councillor Ricky as Cabinet Member for Communities, and through the Braintree Health and Wellbeing Panel, chaired by a corporate director, which consists of partners, I think as Councillor Hensman mentioned, consisting of partners working in this field, both statutory and voluntary in both the statutory and voluntary sectors, and I support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Walsh.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman. I hadn't planned to speak on this, and I'll do so very briefly. I was quite moved to see this, and my statement is personal and somewhat sensitive, and you'll see why. I strongly and very positively welcome this motion from Councillors Garrett and Hensman, and I'm delighted that it's got support across our chamber. I speak as someone who has suffered from mental health anxiety in the last year or so, and I'm not alone in my group. In part, I should say, from aspects of our political culture, but I would like to say that I've had genuine and useful support from our council's EAP scheme and from governance colleagues, and they know who they are. And I greatly welcome this motion, which I do hope we'll all apply in future. So let's honour the memory of somebody that you've mentioned, Madam Chairwoman, Sir David Amis and Joe Cox, in taking forward this very important area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I support this motion on an all-party basis and agree with previous speakers about how important it is. The way our society is structured and functions is in part creating negative influences on many people's mental health. The motion identifies the relatively new pressure from the COVID-19 pandemic, and we may not know for some time the full impacts. One of the ones that worries me most is that on young people who have had their schooling disrupted, the impact on university students not being able to enjoy university life or the normal ways of education. And there's been a big increase in serious mental health related illnesses such as eating disorders. Other pressures include our changing environment, and has been mentioned by some of the public speakers. The loss of green spaces, or indeed the threat of the loss of green spaces, can cause mental health problems, as well as pollution and noise, and then the very serious problems we know about, which are endemic in our society, of drug abuse, homelessness, and, although not as bad in some countries, unemployment. The importance of access to green spaces during the pandemic has been well highlighted by many, and this is something which I believe this council should be doing more on, and as per our proposal for community woodlands. But there are also other new pressures, such as social media, which can be toxic, especially when hostility, false allegations and name-calling are targeted at individuals. I very much welcome that the mover and seconder of the motion suggested our suggestion on councillor roles. We as councillors do not leave our responsibilities to promote and protect good mental health when we walk into the council chamber. We need to set a high example because a lot of people are watching. What took place at the October Full Council did not promote or protect our good mental health or those of the community. Attempting to associate councillor colleagues with criminals or terrorists, or claiming colleagues have forgotten about those who lost their lives in war, remains a great source of concern to me and many councillors, and it set a very poor example of how this council should work. I hope that in time those comments will be reflected on and withdrawn, and that we can all move forward and all work together on an improved and positive environment inside the council chamber, just as we want to outside the council chamber.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Everard.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Of course, this is a very important motion, and I do support it. But can I please bring your attention to the mental health problems that are being created by working at home? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Parker.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I very much support this open motion. I'm very glad it's been brought to Council. It obviously is very timely that this motion has come forward when we're still, unfortunately, still suffering the effects of this pandemic. And as other councillors have pointed out, I think one of the groups which have really suffered recently are children and young people. And I've got personal experience of having children really suffering from having their education disrupted and being unable to have any sort of social contact. And it is so important for people at that stage of their lives to be able to interact and develop their social skills. I think it's a very well-made point by Councillor Everard at issues of working from home for young people as well. But so I think I'm very pleased that this motion has come forward and that the focus that this council is putting on mental health and how we are going to go forward and address the problems that have arisen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to invite Councillor Diana Garrett as the proposer of the motion to close the debate. Please can I remind you that you should confine your reply to previous speeches and you should not introduce any new matters. Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Members, I'd like to thank you for your contributions this evening. It is a good cross-party motion and I'm very pleased that we're like-minded on this subject and therefore close the debate.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs. Garrett. I will now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour, please indicate. This is a unanimous decision and the motion is approved. Thank you. Thank you, members. We will now deal with agenda item 7B, motion by Councillor Nick Unsworth, supporting the Environment Bill commitment to better air quality in Braintree District. The motion by Councillor Nick Unsworth, supporting the Environmental Bill commitment to better air quality in Braintree District. And the motion is set out on pages 8 and 9 of the agenda. And I can confirm that the proposer and the seconder of the motion are present this evening, so this item can proceed. Before I invite Councillor Unsworth to formally move the motion, I remind members that one amendment has been submitted, which is set out in the supplementary report circulated to all members prior to the meeting. We will deal with the amendment once the motion has been formally moved and seconded. Councillor Nick Unsworth, please can you formally move your motion, which is set out on pages 8 and 9 of the agenda?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I formally move as written on the agenda items, pages 8 and 9.
Thank you. And can I, upon this submission, this motion was seconded by Councillor Walsh. Councillor Walsh, do you second this motion?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I would like to second it, and I reserve my right to speak, please.
Thank you. Members, as I have indicated, before I invite Councillor Unsworth to make the speech on the motion, we must first deal with the amendment. Please can I invite Councillor Schmidt, Mrs. Schmidt, to move the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I formally move the amendment as circulated to members.
Councillor McKee, do you second the amendment?
I reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Mrs. Smith. Please can I invite you to make your speech on your amendment?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I choose to come up here as it's very difficult to juggle lots of papers without a table. As I said, I've already formally moved the amendment. My proposed amendment to the motion by Councillor Unsworth for a commitment to better air quality in Braintree is based on the fact that we have already committed to reviewing our current monitoring to ensure that it continues to monitor high-risk pollutants and locations and to take appropriate action. We have 20 monitoring points within the district, and if any indicate a lowering of quality or a new potentially polluting industry moves into the district, then as is normal practice, this will be investigated and, where possible, action taken. An example of this was the old, now defunct foundry in Rain. Members may have noted that we have applied for a further 2 monitors in next year's budget. However, I'm sure that members do not need a monitor to think where a couple of areas of concern might be. The first being Galley's Corner with its constant standing traffic. BDC has done what it can to help towards this by putting aside £2.5 million towards a slip road to help relieve congestion. But this will only be fully resolved with the continued dualling of the A120. The other area, of course, is Head Street in Halstead. But other than demolishing several buildings at the junction, a bypass would relieve the problem, neither of which is in the gift of BDC. However, extra monitors have been put in place to collect more data to see if an air quality management area needs to be declared. All large developments within the district require an air quality report as part of the planning process. The data which is collected is available on the Essex Air website, and the comments on the last set submitted for 2019 states that generally air quality in the Braintree district is good, and in general NO2 concentrations have been decreasing over the past 5 years. The council should continue their hard work to ensure that future developments do not negatively impact local air quality. Now, Councillor Unsworth shows his knowledge of nitrogen oxides, carbon monoxide, sulphur dioxide, ozone and particulates. It seems to show a bit of lack of understanding of finances. Such a system that he is proposing would cost tens of thousands of pounds, plus maintenance, extra staff, etc., which would come from revenue. This outlay would deplete the climate change budget, or would have to come from general funds. So which service would he be prepared to cut? Because that is what it could mean. As can be seen from the quote from the Essex Air website, there is nothing that indicates the need for such a system within Braintree district. Our testing regime is as required by DEFRA, and if the new Environment Bill requires changes, then this would be acted upon. Therefore, Madam Chairman, I propose that the first 4 paragraphs of the original motion are accepted, and a final paragraph that Council reaffirms this commitment and calls upon the Cabinet member to implement any affordable changes that might be required following such a review. I so move, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Members, we are now open the debate on the amendment. Please can I remind you that speeches should relate strictly to the amendment under discussion and be necessary for the progression of the debate. Speeches should be no longer than 5 minutes, and I will curtail excessive speeches or where the speech no longer addresses the amendment. Members may only speak once on the amendment debate. Do any members wish to speak on the amendment? If so, please indicate by raising your hand or via the chat function.
Madam Chairman, you have Councillor Kilmartin on the chat function if you want to call her forward first, and then I can record people in the room.
Councillor Kilmartin, can you hear us?
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you very much. I'd like to support this amendment. I am very keen that we do continue to review our current air quality monitoring and ensure that it does continue to monitor high-risk pollutants and locations and take appropriate action. I'd like to know that the Council reaffirms this commitment and calls upon the Cabinet member to implement any affordable changes, affordable being the main word. As a Whittam councillor in Central Ward, Newland Street, which is really our high street, when the A12 is closed, is just a mass of pollutant fumes in gridlocked areas. And further to that, I should add that Whittam Town Council is doing its best in rather interesting ways, in that we have removed fluorescent light bulbs which leak mercury out into the environment, and we've changed those to non-toxic light bulbs. And I would very much like Braintree District Council to follow suit, and the entire country actually. If we can get rid of one huge pollutant, it's one huge pollutant less. And so thank you very much. I support this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Kilmartin. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The primary concern about this amendment is that it deletes all of the proposed actions in the original motion, and we've taken officer advice on that. Officer advice is that it can, but it does seem a bit perverse because it means that what this amended motion would do doesn't actually work, apart from the fact it negates the original. And it doesn't work because it says that we should ensure that it continues to monitor high-risk pollutants and locations, and then reaffirms this commitment. But actually, this council doesn't currently monitor high-risk pollutants, many of the high-risk pollutants. That was one of the main points of the original motion. The council does not monitor, for example, particulate matter, and one of the public speakers mentioned how dangerous some of those are, the very small PM2.5s, which can actually, are so small they get into people's bloodstreams, and it doesn't monitor for another significant pollutant, which is very worrying to people who have asthma and similar conditions, which is ozone, ground level ozone. Very good thing to have in the stratosphere, not very good thing to have at ground level. So I'm afraid to say the amendment actually not only knocks out all of the things we were trying to do, but it doesn't make sense in itself. We also need to look forward. The World Health Organization is proposing, it's going to be interesting to see whether this government accepts it or not, much lower levels of limits on NOx, nitrogen dioxide and nitrous oxide, which are the main primary indicators for other pollutants. And it may be that we have to, in time, think about much stricter monitoring ourselves anyway. And nor did the original motion say we have to do this tomorrow, or say that it's got to come at the expenses of other services. What it's proposing is something we're going to do in the future. We don't actually monitor very significant areas in this district now. The whole of Witham North Ward has no air quality monitoring in it. And those of us who live fairly close to that, and those who live on it, on the main road there, knows that Braintree Road and Cressing Road are very congested and polluted at peak times. There's no monitoring takes place. The amendment also knocks out the proposal to give better data to residents. Surely that's something we should be doing anyway, is giving much better real-time data to residents of what local air quality is. Essentially, I fear that the amendment shows a lack of ambition and a lack of focus on this important health issue from the Conservative group. And it is worrying that the Cabinet member's main solution seems to be to build more roads, which will generate more traffic and more emissions. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Unsworth.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As we know, air quality is a very topical issue, and it remains, and it is remiss of this council to ignore public interest and concern in their air quality. After all, it's quite literally close to their heart and lungs, and it's something we all have to breathe. The National Atmospheric Emissions Inventory Map shows appalling pollutants such as arsenic, cadmium, benzene in most of our towns and along most of our road network. It also indicates NOx, as the Cabinet member has pointed out, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and small particles known as particulate matter 2.5, prevalent in Halstead, Witham, Braintree, Sybil Headingham, Coggeshall, to name but a few. I'm sure there are more. I want to point out that we do not monitor particulate matter 2.5 at the moment. We need to. Our own air quality report in 2020, not the 2019 report, as was pointed out, highlights this as a need. We do not monitor mercury. I don't think anybody does, as has been mentioned by other members. The original motion is not specific. It does not describe how the air quality monitoring is achieved or done. The original motion identifies what features this council needs to meet its obligation under the Environment Act and provide better air quality information to our constituents. The proposed amendment suggests the implementation of an affordable air quality monitoring system. Both the proposer and the seconder are well aware of the budget request of some £30,000 for next year for air quality monitoring, but unbelievably they think the original motion suggestions are not affordable. Perhaps they can tell me why. Modern detectors vary from between £400 to £1,000 each. These are the ones we're suggesting we would use, or features we would use. And since we currently monitor in 22 locations or thereabout, the budget means we can monitor air quality with more modern detectors in more locations. How? So much for questioning affordability. Officers have confirmed that the new hose bonus can fund an air quality system, Therefore, I'm not asking for cuts, which seems very appropriate to me to use the air quality, to use the new homes bonus. Furthermore, most providers offer a level of scalability, both operational and capex, whether we rent them or lease them, that we could take further advantage of in the future, improving affordability looking forward. The proposals made in the original amendment are affordable, so let's not put a price on air quality. It's priceless. Isn't this what we are supposed to be doing as councillors, influencing and driving what this district needs? Perhaps even a commitment to COP26 as another national issue that's already been mentioned. Climate Change Action Plan may well include a review of our current air quality monitoring, but the amendment ignores the scope of action. It is not the appropriate action. We need advanced detectors, open data, monitoring small particles. We also need to take advantage of the communication networks that will reduce detector visits and report latency, so we can report in real time. Air quality has an influence on planning decisions, as we know. The data provided by advanced detection will only improve the level of air quality information available to planners. Why would we want to avoid this? Adopting the original motion meets our obligations, reporting obligations, and help protect the health of our constituents. It is the appropriate action. The proposed amendment removes all these, making no use of them, which is the definition of negates, kicking them into the long grass. The proposed amendment deliberately and clearly voids essential features required by the Environment Act and prevents BDC from informing constituents about their air quality via a class-leading system. Furthermore, the amendment does not provide action or alternatives whatsoever, so I urge you to reject this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Unsworth. Councillor Thorogood.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, I just want to say that I think the amendment basically waters down the motion to a point where it's not worth voting for. It seems to me that communities in the Braintree district are continually having to fight for cleaner air, and this amendment continues in that vein. The Conservatives talk about levelling up, but to me it seems like levelling down. With the road building programme and the incinerator going ahead, we need the best monitoring equipment that we can have, and that's what we're looking for. In fact, Councillor Tattersley said earlier, any policy is only good as it is monitored, and we need the best monitoring equipment possible. And unfortunately, the amendment reduces that aim. That's what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thorogood. Councillor Tattersley.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I support the amendment. The original proposals would cost many thousands of pounds. I just don't accept that equipment that can measure all the parameters mentioned in the original motion can be afforded for the sort of money that's already been mentioned, particularly when we're talking about providing a network, wherever that means, across the whole of the district. That would mean dozens of them. Finchingfield have already asked for air pollution monitoring in the centre of Finchingfield. Now, I do know a little bit about air pollution monitoring. I studied air pollution monitoring for a year at Nottingham University following my professional qualifications, and carried out monitoring across a whole range of industrial sites in South Yorkshire. These included blast furnaces, electric arc furnaces, coking plants, Bessemer converters, hospital incinerators, crematoria, and a small household and trade waste incinerator. And apart from some notional sulphur dioxide and airborne particle monitoring carried out in the office, all the other monitoring was carried out using the various organisations, the various polluting organisations, owned statutorily provided monitoring equipment. At this stage, I don't know what proposals the Cabinet Member intends introducing, but I feel sure that it would be proportionate, affordable and accurate without committing the council to unnecessary symptoms, and I support the amended motion.
Councillor Bohr, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. Madam Chairman, I should like to express support for this motion, or for this amendment, although of course I can't vote whilst attending virtually. I support the amendment because I believe that this is such a technical issue, which I don't believe that most members would understand. And I believe this kind of proposal should be a collaboration between officers and members, so that, you know, it can be properly considered. I don't think this is something that we, you know, I don't think that the original motion is something that we could reliably vote on. So I express support for it. However, in any future view of our current air quality monitoring, I would note that scientific research shows 3 particular situations where traffic pollution levels are intensified due to emissions building up faster than they can disperse. From narrow roads with no front garden or curtilage, and there's effectively a canyon. Secondly, at the bottom of the valley, where the pollution tends to collect. And thirdly, whilst motor vehicles are idling or travelling slowly due to queues and bottlenecks. May I suggest that if at any time additional monitoring points were to be created, then these kinds of locations, such as the junction of Church Lane with Bradford Street, Bocking, where all 3 of those situations exist, might usefully be considered. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor McGee, as you seconded the amendment to the motion, reserving your right to speak and have not yet spoken, please can I invite you to speak? It's entirely up to you.
I've listened with interest to sorry, it's gone green. Someone hasn't got red. It's the chair.
Councillor McKay, if I could just interrupt you, it's just not quite picking you up, so no, not quite. We'll just change the microphone.
Can you hear me now?
There we go, perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
The original motion by Councillor Unsworth was written as though you would think the authority had not invested over many years and there was no air quality monitoring in place, when in fact this year's budget, has been spoken by my colleague, includes a significant investment in further air quality monitors to be provided the budget gets approved in 2022 onwards. And as also my colleague pointed out, the main areas of pollution and air quality problems are caused by traffic at Galley's Corner on the A120 in Braintree, and affects the entire stretch from the A131 Marks Farm roundabout to the Panners Farm junction. However, no amount of monitoring in real time will assist with strategic decisions, as the cause is known, and BDC have allocated 2.5 million towards the Millennium Slips alongside funding from Essex County Council and Highways England. So further monitoring of any particulate would not change the decision about the resultant cause of the pollution along that significant stretch. It affects the residents who live in wards in Bocking, Blackwater, all Braintree wards, Cressing and Great Lotley. So a lot of people in this room are affected by the pollution caused by this, and the remediation is in fact a relief of that roundabout and a further road building. Regardless of what you say, road building will in fact reduce the pollution for residents. If I were cynical, I would believe that Councillor Unsworth is campaigning to stop the waste management site at Rivenhall Airfield, and that monitoring of the air quality surrounding that site will be responsibility of the operator and Essex County Council.
Sorry to interrupt, Councillor McKay. There has been a point of order called in the room. Madam Chairman, if you would like to do.
I withdraw it. It's not important. I've made the point. Right. The provision of real-time air quality monitoring with remote access to measure and monitor the extended range so that public can access the data online to make informed decisions is not part of the current strategy, and I expect the business case, if it were made, for benefits versus cost would be very interesting indeed, and I'm sure it will be very hard to make the case. Not to mention the IT network, the IT support that would require, and so the incremental cost would be quite significant. Now, somebody mentioned, I think it was you, Councillor Abbott, that officers have confirmed that new homes bonus could be used, or was it you? Well, that's not an officer decision, and in fact, I have had conversations with the officer you spoke to, and it's true it could be, but that's a cabinet decision against our strategy as to where we use those resources against the residents' best needs, and so it's not an officer decision that can be made. And I will stress it's a decision by members of cabinet collectively as to where that bonus should be used, and it is derived from housing growth, and therefore the requirement to sustain that housing growth is how we use that budget. And I think that's the point. So I will support, and I'll continue to support this amendment, because I actually believe it's the right thing to do, and to support the Cabinet member in her measures of monitoring air quality in the district. Thank you. I so move.
Thank you, Councillor McGee. Thank you, members. I now invite Councillor Mrs. Smith as the proposer of the amendment to close the amendment debate. Please can I remind you that you should confine your reply to previous speeches and you should not introduce any new matters. Councillor Mrs. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Kilmartin. I'm glad that Witham Town Council is taking a close interest in these matters. Councillor Abbott, a couple of points. You talk about the problem in Witham North. Have you raised this with officers that you need a monitor there? Because, we have 2 new monitors coming that can be used. If members don't raise these issues, then, officers can only deal with the matters that they know of at the present. You also made the point that we don't monitor high-level emissions, but our system that we have at the moment that monitors NO2, if levels of NO2 are raised, then it means that particulates are also raised, which would then give us cause for alarm. But as I said, this isn't the case at present. We have requested the funding for the 2 new monitors that we will use in other areas. And a lot of it is caused by traffic sitting idling. That is the problem. If roads are clearer, then they wouldn't be causing the problem. Now, Councillor Unsworth seems to think that our figures of tens of thousands of pounds is not correct. Well, I believe what the officers tell me. They work with this sort of equipment. They know how much it costs. And tens of thousands for something that hasn't been proved to be a problem yet seems an extraordinary thing. And we are meeting our obligations, as I already mentioned, according to DEFRA. What Councillor Unsworth's motion is trying to do is trying to preempt something, i.e. the review of our current air quality monitoring to ensure that it continues to monitor high-risk pollutants and locations and take appropriate action. This was something that I believe everyone in the council chamber in September voted for. So I don't understand why you're trying to preempt the outcome of this review. So this is why I have put in my amendment, Madam Chairman, and I now would formally like to close the debate. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mrs. Smith. We will now put the amendment to the vote. Right.
Madam Chairman, for a recorded vote, you need 3 members to indicate. members, rather than have Emma bring the microphone to each and every single one of you, if I could just ask you to speak up when your name is called, that would be most grateful. Thank you.
Members, vote then on the amendment to the original motion put forward by Councillor Unsworth. If you can just let me know which way you want to vote. Councillor Abbott.
Sorry, this is the amendment by Councillor.
Sorry, the amendment. For clarity, the amendment put forward by Councillor Smith to the original motion by Councillor Unsworth. Councillor Abbott.
Against.
Councillor Beavis.
Against.
Councillor Butland.
For.
Councillor Coleridge.
For.
Councillor Mrs Cunningham. Councillor Cunningham.
For.
Councillor Euston.
For.
Councillor Everard.
For.
Councillor Garrett.
For.
Councillor Hensman.
For.
Councillor McKee.
For.
Councillor Parker.
For.
Councillor Pell.
For.
Councillor Pritchard.
For.
Councillor Ritchie.
For.
Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Spray.
For.
Councillor Tattersley.
For.
Councillor Thorogood.
Against.
Councillor Unsworth.
Against.
Councillor Van Dulken.
For.
Councillor Wallace.
Against.
Councillor Walsh.
Against.
Councillor Wilson.
For.
Councillor Wrench.
For.
And Councillor Wright.
Against.
Pardon? Yeah. The amendment has been approved and now is the substantive motion for debate. Right, the substantive motion. Members, as the amendment has been approved, the amendment becomes the substantive motion. The original motion will not be debated, and we will now proceed to consider the substantive motion. The original motion and the amendment have already been moved and seconded before. Therefore, we will now open the debate on the substantive motion. Please can I remind you that speeches should relate strictly to the substantive motion under discussion and be necessary to the progression of the debate. Speeches should not be longer than 5 minutes, and I will curtail excessive speeches or where the speech no longer addresses the amendment. Members may only speak once. Do any members wish to speak on the substantive motion? If so, please indicate.
Madam Chairman, you've got Councillor Walsh.
Yep. Councillor Walsh.
Madam Chairman, as the seconder, I prefer to speak at the end, please.
Councillor Walsh, the original motion is now not being debated because the amendment has been passed, so we're now dealing with the substantive. So we're just opening up for debate, so you do not have the reserved right in this debate. If you wish to speak, now is your opportunity to do so.
I'll speak from over here. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I would like to start, and I'll be brief. I do readily acknowledge that both nationally and on this council there has been some progress both on climate change, and that's recognised. This is the third full council meeting in a row that I've spoken on this matter. I do nonetheless note and regret that the majority group have significantly amended the previous original motion to remove any reference to particular toxic gases. I hope members don't think that these are unimportant and somehow acceptable. I'm sure members here will note, keeping in touch with the news, that a London coroner considered the matter twice in the last year and has accepted
that the death of a young girl who died of asthma was in part caused by air pollution, that could become a very significant legal judgment. And I'm not introducing this matter, unlike a previous member accidentally, should the disintegrated waste management facility go ahead on the old Rivenhall airfield, I hope this will not be a cause of regret, as 600,000 tonnes of material are incinerated. I wonder if that might change our attitude to air monitoring.
Excuse me.
I can't allow that to go when, as a point of order, when I mentioned it, I gave way. Same debate, same issue.
Sorry, Councillor McKay, just in terms of the point of order, what was the issue for the Madam Chairman?
I think I was challenged on the point of order of mentioning the Rivenhall waste management, and I gave way. And now the next speaker has now also brought it into the debate. I think that is the same point of order, and I will ask him to retract.
I'm allowing the point of order, so you can proceed now.
Okay. I don't see Anyway, I urge nonetheless Braintree District Council to give serious consideration to designating a number of specific air quality monitoring areas. If we're serious about this issue, we need to do something about it. As you may have known, as you may well know, an adjoining such as in central Braintree or Whittam, not just to measure, but to seek to do something about this situation, to manage pollution and to encourage active transport. We have, after all, passed both a climate change and a cycling strategy. I've only got a couple of other points to make. I worry, too, that you have included in the now substantive motion the concept of affordable. How much air pollution can we afford in terms of its human, social and medical cost? And if we are to actually achieve our unanimously agreed climate change and cycling strategies, let's make them more than cosy declarations. A number of you may have seen that an adjacent council, Colchester Borough Council, a front page headline on their newspaper was that 1 in 20 deaths occurred from air pollution. They have already designated 3 AQMAs and have decided that's not enough. I'll close with a quote from The Economist. So this is hardly, and you may be able to see this, this is hardly a radical lefty or green publication. The illustration here says, and this is talking about the follow-up to COP26, deeds, not words. And the quote I would like to introduce is, there will be a push for better data and more transparency to ensure that progress towards decarbonisation is genuine. So let Braintree breathe. I would briefly like to, if I may I reflect on a couple of comments that have come up in the debate?
Councillor Walsh, you can make comment as part of your debate, but you only have a minute left in your time.
Thank
allocation.
You. We talked earlier about dualling and bypasses. Well, when I did my postgraduate planning qualification many decades ago, more than I'd like to remember, it was shown with the M25 that it generated traffic. Because it's there, people use it. More traffic, more air pollution. Councillor Kilmartin's comment on light bulbs, while illuminating, reminds me, I'm afraid, a little bit about what they did with the deck chairs on the Titanic. Councillor Bohr said that we're not qualified to vote on this matter, yet we can vote on complex financial and planning matters. Councillor McKee talked about monitoring, which I find slightly bizarre. I sincerely hope that you will never need an MRI or a scan. And finally, Councillor Smith said don't preempt, but positively recognises and seeks to build on the previous good work that's been done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh.
Madam Chairman, I've got no members wishing to speak on the chat function. I'm not sure. Oh, Councillor Abbott. Sorry.
Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll be brief as I can. Yes, I wanted to pick up on a couple of points made during the debate, and they've got a common theme really from 3 of the Conservative members, and it's basically why are you bothering us all, you opposition people, with your motion? And Councillor Smith said she really didn't understand why we put it forward. Well, that's the job of an opposition group, is to put forward alternative ideas. That's what we're here for, and I would imagine that's the same in any council chamber. Councillor Bors said there'd been a lack of discussion with officers, as if he knows that to be the case. There was discussion with officers. The exact wording of the original motion was discussed by one of the directors of the council to make sure that it was compliant with the constitution and also fitted with council policy. And again, we're perfectly entitled to do that. In fact, it would be remiss of us not to do it. Councillor Schmidt said that nitrogen dioxide was the only pollutant monitored because it was an indicator when it went up of other pollutants. That's true in general terms, but it is not true in precise terms. The levels of other pollutants can be influenced by all sorts of other things, and a very good point was made earlier that in the future, even with electric cars, we're going to have problems with particulates from brakes and tyres. So it's not true in precise terms. But I do want to just finish off by really having a very strong go at Councillor McKee for yet again saying that road building is the solution to all this. Try saying that to the people of central Chelmsford, where they were promised relief from traffic noise and pollution congestion when the Chelmsford bypass was built. That was only in the 1980s, and look at central Chelmsford now. Try saying that to the people of central Braintree when the Braintree bypass was built in the 1980s. Same thing. As Councillor Walsh said, try saying that to the people who experienced what's been termed the biggest car park in Britain, the M25. If you build more roads, you'll get more traffic. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. I will now invite Councillor Smith as the proposer of the amendment if she has any final words. And please can I remind you, you should confine your reply to previous speeches and not introduce any new matters.
Madam Chairman, if I could just correct that it's the proposer to the substantive motion rather than the amendment, just a matter of record.
Sorry.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Councillor Walsh mentioned about giving serious consideration to air quality areas. I think there's quite a difference between Colchester, which is a large city, compared to Braintree district, which has 3 largest towns but is mostly rural. And as I said in the beginning, we have put extra monitors in Head Street at Halstead to look at the level of pollution there and to see if we need to put in an air quality area. So to try and compare us to Colchester, I think is really not a very good comparison. Councillor Abbott says you feel as if why are you bothering us all, as it's the opposition to put alternative ideas. Well, as I said again, you are preempting something that you agreed on in September. So why are you trying to do this? Why are you trying to preempt work that we say that we're going to do? And there really is nothing else I can say on this matter, except that I'm not sure if this is new or not. I am an asthmatic, and also I have serious allergies to many chemicals. I only have to walk along a street to know if there's something wrong with the air quality. So I don't want anyone thinking that I don't care, because I care about myself as well as other people. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Right, we will now put the substantive motion to the vote. Members, the substantive motion as set out on the supplementary report has been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please indicate. The substantive motion.
Madam Chairman, if you could ask all those against and then all those who abstain.
Sorry. All those against? All those who abstain? Thank you very much. The substantive motion has been approved. Thank you, members. We will now deal with agenda item 7C, motion by Councillor J. Beavis, improving primary care in the district, Braintree district. Members, the motion is set out on pages 10 and 11 of the agenda. I can confirm that the proposer and the seconder of the motion are present this evening, so this item can proceed. Before we start, members are advised that there has been an amendment to this motion submitted by Councillor Butland and seconded by Councillor Tattersley. The amendment has been accepted by the proposer of the original motion, Councillor Beavis. As a result, the amended motion, as circulated to members in the supplementary report ahead of this evening, will become the substantive motion, for which will be debated this evening. Councillor Mrs. Beavis, please can you formally move the substantive motion as set out in the supplementary report? You will be able to speak to the motion once it has been seconded.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I move the substantive motion as set out as item 7C in our order papers. And just for clarity, it's a cross-party motion about health, particularly in the Braintree district and with health partners, the new Mid and South Essex integrated care system. I so move.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Beavis. Upon submission, this motion was seconded by Councillor Abbott. Councillor Abbott, do you second this motion?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I second the motion and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Beavis. Can I invite you to make your speech? Are you going to stay there, or?
Yes, thank you, Chairman.
Okay.
I'll stay seated. Thank you very much indeed. In 2012, the Health and Social Care Act brought decision-making back to local government. Directors of public health came back to local authorities, and clinical commissioning groups and health and wellbeing boards were formed. Under the Health and Care Bill currently going through Parliament, the work of the CCG will be covered by the ICS with a health population of 1.2 million. The ICS has published its 5-year plan to support health and wellbeing, bringing care closer to home and improving local health services. This ICS wants to drive improvements through place-based, locality, neighbourhoods and clusters. This is something that the CCGs and the Health and Wellbeing Boards have struggled to deliver, and so an opportunity exists at a local level to put communities at the heart of health improvements. This will require a different form of leadership at a local level, possibly council-led. In driving through improvements, the ICS states that once the pandemic has passed, we will deliver an approach called Live Well, initiated by Braintree District Council and adopted by most Essex local authorities. On the 2nd of September and the 26th of November, Councillor Tattersley, Cabinet Member for Health, forwarded to all councillors a bulletin on health. The updates focused mainly on acute care settings. Main hospitals and specialist treatments are regularly scrutinised by Essex County Council Health Scrutiny Committee, of which Councillor Tattersley is a member. During 2018 to 2021, Councillor Tattersley attended only 11% of these meetings. Now, there may have been a good reason for his non-appearance, but the new opportunities for local health integration require a much greater commitment. In the Braintree district, we want our residents to live well. A fresh look at the council structure on health could create a primary care charter in partnership at a local level under the banner of Live Well. If developed, Live Well could support the ICS further to better deliver health and wellbeing outcomes across our district. Currently, residents cannot receive a COVID booster in Housestead. It seems crazy to have 20 community beds empty at Housestead Hospital when general hospitals are calling out for beds. End-of-life care is a time when families and friends want to be together closer to home, and yet care beds have closed in Housestead and the Cones. Mobile services such as 10 years of breast screening in Housestead and the MRI scanner located at the rear of Braintree Hospital are valuable services, but we require more services closer to home. Why are we not calling for larger Section 106 health contributions instead of repeatedly saying it is not a district council issue? The Live Well Primary Care Charter could be used as a beacon, sending out a message to developers, stakeholders and partners that when it comes to delivering better health improvements for our residents, we expect more. The amendment as proposed by, the amendment as proposed by Councillor Butland and seconded by Councillor Tattersley commits to working with our NHS partners to support the improvements of health throughout the Braintree district. I therefore recommend that we fulfil the aspiration of the ICS 5-year plan by considering some of my recommendations in the original motion, in particular to form a Live Well Primary Care Charter, a levelling up of access to health services across our district, and better and more focused delivery on Section 106 agreements. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Beavis. I would like to open this debate on the substantive motion. Please can I remind members that speeches should relate strictly to the substantive motion under discussion and be necessary for the progression of the debate. Speeches should be no longer than 5 minutes, and I would curtail excessive speeches or where the speech no longer addresses the substantive motion. Members may only speak once on this substantive motion debate. Do any members wish to speak? And I know Councillor Kilmartin would like to speak. Can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Well done, thank you. I'm very pleased that the pharmacists are going to be joining the PCNs and be trained to prescribe, which will lift a lot of workload from general practitioners, and that the National Health Service will continue to increase the role of these people in delivering additional clinical services. I have 3 pharmacies in my Witham constituency of Central Ward, and all, though, are frantically busy just doing the dispensing. All currently offer pharmacist interviews as well. I have used them, but I do think that the pharmacies will need to consider employing extra staff to deal with more personal inquiries and more dispensing. So I'm very pleased that we're still moving forward, but it's all due to larger numbers living in our towns and districts, and we have to take account of that. But we must move forward, and so I support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kilmartin. Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll speak briefly and from here. The Conservative amendment to this motion, while accepted, focuses, I note, primarily, it seems, on praising central governments. I hope that the undefined concept of levelling up doesn't result in coughing up. More positively, I'd like to say, and I do support the amended motion, that we've all seen during the recent pandemic, and now given the great need for booster jabs to confront the more recent Omicron variant, of the amazing and indeed inspiring work of our primary care system, and especially of our GP practices. I noticed the Coggeshall surgery was recently ranked very highly. The last point I'd like to make, and develops from that, and is I hope will be seen as a cross-party and positive comment, on behalf of Councillor Joe Beavis, I'd like to record a strong and indeed a very positive note of appreciation, backed up, I trust, by any required investment, for all our local doctors, nurses and pharmacists who I please Councillor Kilmartin has just referred to, and for all of our public health workers. We thank you from the bottom of our heart, and let's do rather more than clap for the NHS.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Councillor Tattersley.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. In many ways, I can understand the motivation in attempting to highlight the difficulties a significant number of our local residents are reporting to ourselves as the significant number of local residents reporting to local members the difficulties that they've got in getting an appointment or seeing their doctors. However, I'm pleased that we're not proposing passing a motion that will not make an iota difference to the current situation. I know that the NHS and GPs and government are fully aware of the problems and are taking action both to increase the number of GPs and in the longer term, and investigating what roles other health professions can play in freeing up doctors' time, including making greater use of pharmacies. And I think that the motion as it is now actually reflects the fact that the government have recognised that there are some issues in that. However, as I've said a number of times, the responsibility of providing healthcare facilities lies with the NHS, and the Council can only support any initiatives they put forward or request from us. Indeed, the amount of Section 106 monies that the Council's holding for new health facilities is exactly the amount that the NHS request us to put in the planning proposals. At this stage, Madam Chairman, may I pay tribute to Councillor Beavis and your Chief Executive, who promoted the Health and Wellbeing Panel when Councillor Beavis was a Cabinet member. The panel is an officer-led group and is represented by a wide range of organisational professionals who deal with all aspects of healthcare across the district. In my opinion, the officer-led group, with the various organisation and professionals, is doing a far better job than anything that the County Council have done by way of developing health facilities. Members of the Health and Wellbeing Panel include the County Council, Active Essex, the NHS, the CCG, East Light Homes, Community 360, Bernardo's, the DWP, MENCAP, East Anglia Drivability, and so on. Those organisations are not represented at the county in their meetings. And the discussions that are had at the Health and Wellbeing Panel obviously feed back to their own organisations and also building to our Live Well strategy. I believe that the work of the Health and Wellbeing Panel, I'm trying to read two bits of paper without a desk, the work of the Health and Wellbeing Panel actually answers a lot of the questions that Councillor Beavis mentions about her proposed primary care local strategic partnership. I think that the one that we've got at the moment actually covers most of those issues, and I fully support this motion.
Thank you very much. Councillor Scattergood.
Chairman, on point of order. I'm very conscious of the time, Madam Chairman.
Yeah,
could I move under Standing Order 1217, subsection I, that we put this matter to the vote, given that it is one that is supported by all parties, and that we change the order of business to take items 9 and 10, which require a decision by Council, so that we can complete that by 10:15 and then revert to whatever is left in that time. I so move, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, in light of the move of a motion without notice, we'll deal with that item now. So if any member wishes to speak in support or object to that as an item, and then we will deal with the debate. So if any member wishes to just have a comment against that that's been moved, that's currently on the table. So that is to wind up this and vote on the item before us, the substantive, and move to the two items requiring a vote on the agenda. Not yet. So Madam Chairman, we'll deal with the motion that's just been moved
without notice. So if any member wishes to speak, bring them forward now. Councillor
Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can understand the motivation for what Councillor Button's proposing, but how close were we to finishing the debate on the health motion? If I was going to say very few words as seconder to sum up, I mean, it'd be nice just to finish that if it only takes a few minutes.
Councillor Abbott, whilst I accept what you've asked, unfortunately the motion now that's on the table is to deal with moving to a vote on the item without further debate. Madam Chairman, Councillor Ritchie indicating to speak.
No.
Apologies.
No.
Madam Chairman, I'm not aware of any other member wishing to speak on this item, so we'll move to a vote.
Right. Just bear with me. Right. What about Councillor Beavis? No. Right, so no.
Just deal with all those in favour before moving
So members
to vote on the substantive. Please indicate.
Members, the substantive motion set out in the supplementary report has been...
Madam Chairman, if I can just interrupt, it's a vote on moving to a vote without further debate on the substantive. If members could indicate by way of show of hands. Thank you, Chairman. And if you indicate all of those against.
All those against, please indicate. Any abstentions?
Madam Chairman, that's a move in favour.
The motion has now been...
No, sorry, Madam Chairman, that's the move to vote on the substantive. So if we can now move to vote on the substantive item immediately, Madam Chairman. So again, just calling members to vote by way of show of hands. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I have a call of hands, please? Thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. The motion has been approved.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We are now going to move to the two items that are on the agenda that require a vote from the Council this evening. That's moving straight to the appointment of the committees, which is item 9 on your agenda.
Members, this item is set out on pages 22 to 23 of the agenda. Please can I invite Councillor Graham Butland, Leader of the Council, to introduce the report and move the recommendations. And please can I remind you that before you make your speech, your recommendations must be seconded.
I move the recommendations.
Second those recommendations, Madam Chairman.
Thank you.
Councillor O'Neill, did you reserve your right to speak?
Reserve right, thank you.
Much appreciated.
Would I like to ask and invite Councillor Butland to speak on this matter?
Very quickly, Madam Chairman. I announced earlier this evening that Councillor Van Dolken would be joining the Cabinet. It clearly would be inappropriate for him to continue as both a member and chairman of the Governance and Audit Scrutiny Committee. It's therefore the Conservative Group's recommendation or proposal to change our representation on that from Councillor Van Dolken to Councillor Wrench, and that Councillor Wrench would be the chairman of the Governance and Audit Scrutiny Committee. I so move, Madam Chairman, the recommendations on page 22 in 2.1 and 2.12.
Councillor Cunningham, do you wish to speak? Thank you.
Madam Chairman, if you could call any members in the room who wish to speak on the item. I haven't got anyone on the chat function at the moment.
Any other councillors wish to speak?
No, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, members. The recommendations set out on page 22 of the agenda have been moved and seconded. All those in favour? No. All those against? Any abstentions? The recommendation has been approved. Number 10.
Madam Chairman, if we could then move to deal with the second item that requires a vote this evening, that's item 10, Independent Remuneration Panel.
Members, this item is set out on pages 24 to 28 of the agenda. Please can I invite Councillor John McGee, Cabinet Member for Finance and Corporate Transformation, to introduce the report and move the recommendations. Where is he? Oh.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I move the recommendations on page 24, and I won't read them out. That's recommendations para 2, 2.1, 2.2, and so on. I so move.
Seconded, Madam Chairman. Thank you. Do you wish to reserve your right to speak? Thank you. I'll now invite Councillor McKee to speak on this matter.
Very briefly, the agenda item on page 24 set out that the Independent Remuneration Panel is required to make recommendations to the Council on Members' Allowances Scheme concerning any proposed changes for adoption. The IRP's recommendations include the level of basic allowance received by all members, as well as the level of special responsibility allowances and to whom they should be paid. While it is up to the Council to agree its member allowance scheme under the regulations, it must have regard to the advice and recommendations from the IRP before making any changes. Currently, the Council does not have an IRP, or any RPM members, in place, and a new panel is therefore required in order to continue to support the Council as it reviews the member allowance scheme as part of its annual general meeting preparations. The regulations specify there must be at least 3 panel members, and the guidance suggests that, as far as possible, the makeup of the panel should be representative of diversity and communities in the local area. The regulations allow for the Council to determine the term of office and the allowances paid to members of the panel. The Council's previous members were appointed for a period of 3 years with the provision to extend. Those provisions have now come to the natural end. It is proposed that the new appointment continue on the similar terms and allow the Head of Governance, in consultation with the Head of Finance, to determine the appropriate fee. The Council will look to commence the recruitment in January 22, so I formally move the recommendations on page 24, 2.1, 2.1.1, 2.1.2, 1.3 and 1.4. I so move.
Thank you, Councillor McGee. Councillor Cunningham? Do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Madam Chairman, if you could open the floor up to debate and invite any other member who wishes to speak.
Would anyone else like to speak? In the chat?
Madam Chairman, there's no one in the chat indicating to speak at this time.
Okay. Well, thank you, members. The recommendations set out on page 24 of the agenda have been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Thank you. All those. That's a unanimous vote. Recommendations have been approved. Right.
Madam Chairman, in light of the fact that we have 10 minutes remaining, it might be worth moving back to deal with Councillor McKee's item on the Treasury Management. Councillor Abbott, you are entitled to ask for that, and again we will take it to a vote if it's seconded.
I would like to propose an additional 15 minutes for that purpose.
15.
Madam Chairman, you need a seconder for that.
Right.
Madam Chairman, if you can put that to the vote, please.
Right. Can I ask who's in favour of extending the meeting? Who's against? Sorry, Councillor Abbott.
Madam Chairman, if you could call for any abstentions as well, please.
Oh, any abstentions? Right. No, we will be having no extra time. Did you want to do your agenda item? No. Pardon?
Madam Chairman, if we could move back to item 8, you've probably just about got enough time to deal with the Treasury Management Report, which was to note, and it was a report by Councillor McKee.
Okay, agenda item number 8. Members, this item is set out on pages 12 to 21 of the agenda and is for noting only. Please can I invite Councillor John McGee, Cabinet Member for Finance and Corporate Transformation, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Members, I'm delighted to present the Treasury Management Mid-Year Report for 2021-22 as on your agenda papers 14 to 21 this evening. That's the report is on 14 to 21. The report was first considered by the Governance and Audit Scrutiny Committee on the 28th of October, at which point some small changes were agreed and are now incorporated into the report. You're pleased to hear that I don't intend to present the whole report, but will highlight the key points of note within the report. The report covers Treasury management activity in the current financial year up to the end of September. Economic and market context is considered quite extensively in the report, and if you've read it, you will see that we are living in a very difficult external market financial position of very low interest rates. The credit markets are not behaving properly. The dividends being paid on assets are not steady or predictable. They are okay in some markets, but the US equity markets have not been performing normally. It's a very troubled environment in which the Treasury management operation of this authority tries to balance out its activities against that market. The inflationary pressures have been building and the increasing potential for interest rate increases. However, the position will now have to be overtaken by more recent developments, i.e. the new COVID variant that we've heard about this evening, the economic slowdown that is now starting. It would appear that the GDP numbers are falling, and interest rates look like they're going north of 4, 3.8 I think in October, look like they're going north of 4, some indication that they might even have gone past 4 now to 4.1%. That's not a market conditions that we're used to. The credit outlook has been seen as positive, with increases in investment duration limits advised by Arlene Close, gone from 35 days to 100 days for unsecured investments. Arlene Close, for those that you aren't aware, are professional advisors which advise the officers and the members on credit markets, investment strategies and the like. On borrowing, the Council has a requirement to borrow from time to time, and the report refers to the changes introduced to the PWLB, the Public Works Loan Board policies that affect our ability to borrow. Particularly if it's for investment for yield. So all of that opportunities to be invest for yield under, this is not SIPA regulation, which I'll come on to in a moment. This is the PWLB itself is being much more strict on how you can borrow money for yielding rather than for investments within your residence assets and the like. The report also refers to the LOBO loans as part of the IDP programme. We are looking at the risks and rewards of potential refinance of these loans. We continue to work with Arlene Close as the authority's advisors and will bring forward a proposal to the Council in the new calendar year. Investment activity. The average sum invested over the 6 months of 55.77 million, with a high of 73.48 million of the 30th of September, investment balances were 68.43, which we would expect to reduce over the remainder of the year based on forecast cash flows, including the capital programme spend. And I think you're aware we've got quite an aggressive, ambitious capital programme, and we are delivering on that spending. Short-term investment returns were close to zero, given the continuing ultra-low money market rates. Externally managed pooled funds, £19 million invested. Returns on those were £424,000 for the half year, which equates to an annual return of 4.45%, which, given the turbulence in the market, and those of you who have any investments in pensions and the like, will see that 4.45 return on that sort of safe investment, which they are, it is a reasonable return. I think we can be pretty proud of the performance of those market investments. The market value of these funds had improved with unrealised gains at the 30th of September of 2.29 million. So the total value of our investments is 21.29 for an investment made of 19 million at the start. An improvement over the position at the start of the year for just over £1 million. Although not in the report, it's worth noting that the authority holds unaccounted balances in excess of £5 million in reserves. However, if significant balances were not held, the Treasury management policy would demand a review of the size and shape of any holding of external pooled funds. Benchmarking data for Marling Close show that Braintree above average on income and total returns, reflecting the contribution that the pooled funds are making to our overall performance. Compliance, all activity within limits and parameters agreed by full council in the Treasury Management Strategy, approved in February 2021. Not much the time. The report refers to HM Treasury continuing to develop their guidance to local authorities on preventing LA's, local authorities, from borrowing from PWLB, where they're undertaking investment for yield activity. Also refers to the fact that SIPFA, which is one of the the industry guidance activities, had also invited consultation on further proposed changes to both Prudential Code and Treasury Management Code, summary changes set out in the mid-year report. The Council has since reported to both those consultations. This is a report to be noted, and I think, Chairman, I shall stop there.
Thank you very much, Councillor McGee. Do any members wish to speak on this item? No?
Madam Chairman, there's no indication on the chat function either.
Thank you, Councillor McGee. Members, as I have advised, this report is for noting. Please, can I take it that the report is noted? Right. Now what we're going to do, I'm going to read you something now. Members, we are at the end of our time limit. Therefore, item 13, emergency decision by Chief Executive, will roll forward to the next available council meeting. In line with the arrangements in place while we hold meetings virtually, and members wishing to ask a question of the leader or cabinet members are invited to submit their written questions to the governance team, and a full response will be provided within 10 working days. These questions and responses will be available to all members. Members, as there's no further business items on the agenda, this concludes our business for this full council meeting. Before closing the meeting, please can I remind members that the next meeting of the full council will be held on the 21st of February 2022. Turn over too many pages. The webcast of this meeting will be published on the Council's YouTube channel as soon as possible. Members, if you have any feedback following this evening's meeting, please can you provide this directly to Emma Wisby or Kim Cole, who can consider it for future Council meetings. Thank you, members, for your attendance and participation this evening. And for those watching on the Council's YouTube channel, Merry Christmas, and a very Merry Christmas to you all, and a very Happy New Year. And I close this meeting at 10:15.